Okay. Hey, everybody. Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen leading the movement for movement and bringing you an awesome Tuesday training pro interview with a gentleman who has been with Autism Fitness almost before it was Autism Fitness. Oh, expert coach and just absolute ambassador extraordinaire to everything that we stand for, everything that we do. Mr. Jose Caro, how you doing, sir?
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me. Doing well,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Oh, I was thrilled because we we need to talk on a more regular basis. But I think I'll uh do a halfway decent job of introducing you. So Jose comes from an athletic background, playing soccer or football to everywhere else in the world other than the US. And you've been involved with the autism and neurodivergent population for quite a long time. You have a background in applied behavior analysis as well. And you came to the very first, or one of the very first workshops that I ever did, I think up in Toronto. And from there, you were at the inaugural Autism Fitness Certification, went on to become an expert pro, and your journey has just been remarkable. And I never am less than utterly impressed with the way that you carry yourself as a coach and as a human being, and everything that you do in service to your athletes as well. Did I get everything? I'm
Oh, that's
probably missing
honestly,
some.
I am very humbled, man. That's obviously very good. I think I will say, I think I even traveled to, I want to say was it New York
Yeah,
when you
it
had
was
to
Long
go?
Island the first
Yeah,
one.
Long Island. Yeah, that's where it was. But yeah, I honestly thrilled, man. Thrilled to be here and thrilled to be able to provide any kind of insight and support to anyone that needs.
Yeah. So, the first thing that I wanted to when I was thinking back to, you know, w watching you grow and develop as a coach, we are this May will be coming up on the first pro certification was in May of 2017. So now we're in 2025. And over the course of those, what are we, 7, 8 years, there have been some changes in the programming, in the protocol, certainly a much greater, from my perspective, a much greater emphasis on the strength training component of the program, and some things that we've changed based on the science and practice and best practices of really empathizing with our athletes and communication and the greater range of the diagnosis as well. But I'd like to get your perspective on some key things that you've learned not only from your athletes but in your coaching practice that have really worked for you that maybe you weren't doing when you first started or the first 1 or 2 years that you started, but some things that now have become commonplace in your own practice.
And honestly, it's a very good question, and like I said, I have an intern as well working with me first time this year, and I start to see myself in here, and when I started using autism fitness as part of my programming,
Mhm.
um, there are going to be moments, and I go back to when I used to tell my athletes, no, 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 don't do this, no, 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 don't do that, and looking back at it now, it's like wow, like we were, and I say we as a team, but I
Mhm.
was more um, not putting myself in the shoes of my athlete. And sometimes we need to do that. We need to really slow down, and it's not about them making mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen. I had an athlete that broke a hurdle the other day. It's not the big deal, but we don't need to react to certain situations, if that makes sense. And it's honestly staying calm and working with that athlete and teaching. I think the best part of working with our athletes is teaching them, but also they are teaching us to be patient.
Mhm.
There's moments in our sessions where, you know, yeah, we want to get in there and modify something, or we want to get in there or progress something
Mhm.
and support them and give them prompts. But we also need to remind ourselves that the ultimate goal is for them to be independent in doing the exercise, right? But for me, is going back to before the Autism Fitness programming, everything was sports specific,
Mhm.
which I learned eventually that that was not going to work with some of my athletes.
Mhm.
So taking the program and really looking at the exercise selection that is really focused on improving their quality of life and really focusing on the strength piece. It is probably one of the best parts of the program. Not to say that the other two aren't, but the strength is so fundamental for improving their quality of life and to increase their quality of life and their lifespan. So yeah.
Mhm. How do you find that also? Because I know you also do some sports specific or just some soccer technical skills with your athletes as well. How do you find in with respect to, and I imagine Canada is probably similar to here in the States as far as, sports kind of dominating the landscape, especially for younger individuals as far as physical activity in, oh, we want to be physically active, let's, immediately look to sports. But with respect to something like expectation management, when you're starting with a new athlete, do you find that most families that you work with are open to the idea that we're going to focus predominantly on general training, or do you still get a lot of, well, what about sports? What about sports? What about sports?
Honestly, I think now with the landscape, it's getting better
Mhm.
uh, with parents understanding and also the athlete understanding that it's not about the sport, it's about fundamental movement skills.
Mhm.
And I think the Autism Fitness program really focuses on that. And sometimes it's having that conversation, what is your goal? What are your goals for fitness? Is it to be stronger? Is it to have better motor planning? Is it to have better stability? Um, or is it to play on a sports team? Because I will get both, but majority of parents are really more inclined to, I want my son or my daughter to really learn how to exercise
Mhm.
because they've have gone to sports clubs and places, and this is not discouraging people from going to the club, but sometimes they don't have the bandwidth or the experience to work with them.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, social media is such a big place now that you can really get carried away, and parents get misinformed about, oh, look, this athlete is doing this. Maybe my son or daughter can doing that, and it's okay to see that, but we really need to take a step back and say, okay, can this athlete really do this? Can they really play sports? And if they can't, it's okay. We can manage and go back to really teaching autism fitness and
Mhm.
and the programming. Again, like I said, it's fundamental for improving quality of life and obviously learning how to effectively exercise. And some of my athletes, honestly, they could care less about playing sports. They're so motivated now after so much time working together that I have some athletes that will wait at the door. They'll carry my equipment down, and then we'll start, our programming, right? So I would say that there is a place for sports. It
Mhm.
just has to be the right time and the right place and with the right people.
Sure. I want to go back to that also. If you can elaborate, like, specifically on, you said some of the things that, parents or other people might be seeing, and then they say, oh, can they do this simply because they see it? Is there a particular thing that someone saw where you had to say, well, again, with expectation management, like, this is what this is, and this is why, it either may not be effective or may not be appropriate right now, or it's just ridiculous as on the whole.
It's a great question. Like I have one of my athletes, he's finally been able to participate from soccer.
Mhm.
And he's worked through it. Like I've been working with him he was 7. He's now turning 15.
Mhm.
So there's been years of progress made with the exercise selection, particularly with strength.
Yeah.
And one of his goals is I want to be able to participate from a soccer environment.
Mhm.
So yeah, he's been able to progress and develop strength and stability in order to really focus on playing soccer. I mean, he plays once a week, which
Mhm.
is huge for him.
Mhm.
But the other days of the week, he's doing this program and we're working together. And every athlete is going to be different. So we always have to be mindful that our expectations, especially with Autism Fitness as a program, is to make sure that we are increasing strength, ability, and motor plan. If sport is something that the athlete can do later on because they develop that strength and it's something of interest to them, by all means.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in speaking about your athletes also, what was the last like, can you recall the last like aha moment that you had, whether it was a big, the big bright light bulb or something that just stuck with you with one of your athletes in the way that either they approached an exercise or they approached a concept or a communication that you had where, afterwards, I know that right now you're doing a lot of in-home sessions. You're walking to your car and you're like, oh, I never thought of that. Or, oh, this is how that worked, where you're piecing it together later.
I think I think one of the moments, aha moments for me was, it's funny. It's about hurdle steps.
Mhm.
My athlete, he's a bigger guy, bigger athlete, but he always had difficulty doing hurdle steps because he will not flex. He will
Right.
go around the
Yep.
hurdle. So
Yeah.
there's that pattern of, like almost like swinging the leg around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I think you also simplified it, Eric. So I'm definitely giving you credit for this one too. Is we went back to, oh, we can do one leg over instead of doing 2 feet over. So just again, modifying the exercise to really meet the athlete where they are,
Mm.
so that they really understand what the expectations. Right. There was another aha moment, which was with group drill.
Mm.
And I really had to focus on really breaking down the movement patterns for my athletes. And it was all about, it was something simple as using a squat marker to really have the athlete have his legs there so that it opened up the hips a little bit. He can bend his knees and then scoop.
Mm.
But these were just little things, little details that, happened over time and they just
Yeah.
happen out, you know, curiosity, I guess, being curious about how do we change little things so that we can really get the best for our athletes.
Yeah. Well, and that's what makes it when we talk about an exercise being effective or not, that technical ability lends to so much as far as the exercise outcome too. With that hurdle step, the whole idea is that in addition to locomotion, well, how are we creating the locomotion? Through hip flexion. If we don't have the hip flexion, we just have knee flexion, it's not the same exercise anymore. So just because the athlete is, quote, doing the exercise doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing it correctly. However, the challenge, as you very well know, and I've seen a lot of videos of your athletes, that the challenge is oftentimes not that the athlete doesn't necessarily have the underlying physical capability, which they very well might not. Also, they may not have the stability right now to, to plant that one foot and elevate that hip enough that they're transcending that hurdle. But at the same time, as a coach, we're always wondering, well, is it more on the physical side or is that more cognitive? And they don't, either the athlete doesn't understand that this is the motion that we want them to do, or now to your earlier point, uh, with your athlete, just swinging their leg around, sometimes they're going to use path of least resistance because it's not significantly meaningful for them to engage in that hit. It's like I have to make this meaningful for this particular athlete. And going back to this premise of those light bulb moments also, is there something that you learned about one of your athletes, either recently or in the past, that you said, you know what, this is something that I really need to apply to more of my athletes or all of my athletes?
And I'm going to go back to the hurdle steps.
Yeah.
You know, using different ways to, well, motivation is the key. If your athletes are motivated, they are going to participate. So motivation is key, and how do you develop that is honestly getting to know who your athlete is. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time and patience and really figuring out what is motivating to the athlete. But for the most part, with hurdle steps is using, I think I even used the Sandal one,
Mhm.
get them to really feel where I wanted that knee to go over.
Mhm.
Really, adding different prompts to really get the athlete to understand this is where I want your knee, and that this is what it feels like to get your knee over. And giving that athlete behavior specific praise for getting their knee up, right? And that's how you continue to increase motivation. Is they know now, like that is the expectation. Like Coach Jose is telling me good knees up, like so they understand now, like that is the expectation of that exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to stay on that subject also of motivation. Do you still get, because I certainly have in the past, parents who contact you and say, look, my son or my daughter hates to exercise. Like that's the first sentence you get. Is they hate to exercise. They're always on the couch. They're always in front of a screen. They just like they will not exercise. And how do you as a coach approach that conversation? Or I should say react to that conversation?
It's a good question as well, Eric, because parents sometimes are scared of them getting hurt, of their son or daughter getting hurt because they've never done any exercise.
Really? Okay.
And but over time, and what I do normally in my sessions, especially when we're doing the assessment, when we're doing the pack assessment,
Mhm.
is I always encourage the parents to be there, at
Mhm.
least for the assessment piece, so they can see. Now,
Yeah.
that can also become an issue because, as you know, some of my athletes want to run to their parents and not participate.
Yeah.
But for the most part, and I will say over years of experience doing this as well, is the parents get to see that it's not rocket science. That
Mhm.
it's really taking the time to set up your environment, and that means making sure your hurdles are in a certain place, making sure your stand bells are in a certain place, making sure your dynamic ball is in a certain place for your push throws, overhead throws, and scoop throws. So they see that it's organized. They see the environment. And we just start from where the athlete is at. And what the athlete normally does is they go to something. They either go to the ball. Okay, let's do push throws. If we're doing five to start, good, we're starting five. And then the parents get to see, well, they are exercising. It just may not look the same because you're thinking exercises as being on a machine, on a treadmill, on an elliptical. And honestly, I'm not discrediting those people either, but
That's can.
exercise,
It's fine. You can. No problem with it.
but get to see that really their son or daughter is working. They're motivated. They're participating, and I think that starts to get those gears going. That my son or daughter is going to be okay exercising
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. That much must be such a great moment for you, for a great moment all around. But for you, as a coach and as a practitioner, for the athletes certainly, because they've got now this confidence and this capability of being able to do something. But for the parents also, I'd love, for you to speak to this now, especially as a parent yourself now, what that change that you see in parents when they recognize, oh yeah, my son or my daughter, they can do this. Like here is something that they can actually achieve now. I'm sure you've had many of those moments, but are there any that when I talk about that, any that particularly stick out to you?
Yeah, one of my students, young guy, same thing. Mom was always telling me, I don't know if he's going to be able to participate. He's so disruptive. There's so many maladaptive behaviors that are happening. He's not going to listen. In my first session, and I remember this was during COVID time. Mask on, shield on, gloves on, everything was
Yep.
on. I was already going into my
Old
session, and
PPE. Yeah.
everything was on, and like that is overwhelming. But this little guy, like you know what, he walked through it. Like he met me where I met him where he was at. Was there moments where he'll pull my mask off, my shield off for whatever reason. But you know what? It's staying to the basics and staying with what we're doing. Not going away from what we already know. And obviously having that, really reassuring the parents that it's going to be okay. He is going to learn. We just need the time. He needs the confidence. He needs the motivation. And even sometimes I get permission from the parents, and I'll have like a little video so that they can see their son or daughter working and doing these things. And like that to the parents is everything, because they see that, wow, like I was told that my son or daughter will not be able to do this, will not be able to participate or do certain things, and look at it now. So that for the parent is huge. It just goes to show that they can do things, and he can do those things now at this moment in time.
Sorry, I'm just looking back here because speaking of maladaptive behaviors, one of my dogs just tore up a toy, which is going to be fun because I have plenty of plastic to clean up off my carpet afterwards. Um, One of the things that you brought up is something that I'm seeing more and more of in the social media space when talking about the neurodivergent and the autism population, which is good. And at the same time, I fear that it is going to be watered down in the way that many um, themes or buzzwords or sayings are, and that's meeting them where they're at. So I think you are in a particularly good place to speak about this with your athletes, but what does that actually mean when you're meeting the athlete where they're at, both generally and specifically as well? Because I I think we're going to see a lot more. Oh, you have to meet the learner where they're at. You have to meet Great. What does that actually mean? Like in real practice?
So when you see and when you meet an athlete for the first time, we may have these conceived perceptions of ideas that our exercise that or sorry, our program that we're bringing is gonna go. We're gonna go through all the exercises right away first assessment.
Mhm.
Not reality.
Mhm.
That's not reality. A lot of the times is looking at the athlete and observing, right? Because we want to demonstrate to the athlete what the exercise looks like. So we label, demo, doing, cheat. So we label the exercise, we demonstrate the exercise, and then we see the athlete do it, and we cue accordingly.
Mhm.
But it sounds simple, but it's not really that simple, because the athlete physically, can they do that exercise
Yeah.
right now? If not, we need to modify. If they can and it's too easy, we progress.
Mhm.
Look at the adaptive side. Are they motivated to participate within that exercise?
Mhm.
Sometimes, I'll be honest, they're not.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
Right.
And I think sometimes parents may say, "Oh, it didn't work out the first time," and then I have to remind it, it's going to. Just got to give it time. Just take the
Yeah.
time and let's do another session and see, because it's not going to work sometimes at the first session. Certain things will be more motivating, like hurdle sets might be more motivating than doing chest carries, for
Mhm.
example, right? And that's okay. And
Yeah.
then the last piece, Eric, is the cognitive piece, right? It's really, does the athlete understand what the expectation is? Do they really understand the language that we're using to teach? So we look at those three things, and then we combine and we see, okay, what areas do I need to focus on? If he or she can physically do that exercise, okay, maybe it's the motivation piece I need to work. And it could be something as small as really getting to know the athlete and meeting them where they're at, even knowing a little bit of information, like what do they like talking about? If they're nonverbal, what do they like having?
Yeah.
Do they have something they really enjoy doing? And honestly, that's what it is. It's really taking the time to get to know your athlete and really meeting them where they're at. We're not going there to do 20,000 exercises. No,
Right.
we're really focused on those little things that are going to make them successful, and that's really understanding. physical, adaptive, and cognitive skills for each one of our athletes.
Yeah, it's working in objective, observable reality. Yeah,
Yeah,
especially with that first session that you mentioned. They may be able to do that hurdle step. They may be able to do that overhead throw. I don't know. I'm either seeing it, great, and we can move from here, or I'm not seeing it yet. And then my job is to figure out, which silo
fair.
is this in? Is it physical?
Yeah,
Do they physically not have the capability to do this yet? Are they not motivated and that's why we're not seeing them do it yet? Or do they not yet understand or appreciate
yeah,
not only why to do it, but how? Sometimes it's the how. You can have an athlete who is motivated in as much as they are very happy to be cooperative and are great with directions, but they simply don't have the motor planning skills or that neuromuscular capability to follow that demonstration just yet. And then we have to make an inroad into the cueing too. And I think that you hit upon a really good point in breaking down, what's going on as far as meeting them where they're at, because it's not always just one thing. It's not, oh, they don't want to do it. And even if there is less of a motivation to do okay, well, what's going on for them? Sometimes the athlete just does not feel comfortable doing that exercise just yet. And we have to build trust as well. So, and meeting them where they're at changes over time. Like it's a moment, it's a situation. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've had initial sessions where in the first 5 minutes, the athlete is not likely to perform a certain exercise, but 25 minutes in, when they're starting to feel comfortable and they're cool with me, now they'll try it.
yeah,
So that trust factor is a big one. And I really like what you said as far as looking at the three areas of ability and bringing it back there, because we can make so many assumptions about an athlete the first time or the second time or even the third time that we work with them. And I've definitely, um, I don't even want to say made that mistake, but I've made my assumptions about an athlete and then been proven wrong or not been proven completely right or been proven not completely right, a session or two later. Where I'm like, oh, I didn't think they could do that, or I didn't think that they had full sentences. And then I'm getting a full sentence, like, oh, okay, they do have
yeah,
this, or they do get that. It just, I have to build these bridges and have this scaffolding of communication or of the exercise, or it's the difference between, oh, I do have to ask them 3 times to do
yeah.
this because they're getting dysregulated, and they're not they are hearing me or they're not hearing me, and all of these things. I think it's another point that you raised. You're not going to learn all this stuff in a first session, almost ever.
No.
And even if you do, it's going to change in the second or third session.
Oh, always. Honestly, it always changes. And there's so many things that could make it change. Obviously, there could be times where your athlete didn't get a good night's sleep. He's not gonna wake up. He's not gonna be as motivated as the week before. And this happened to me over time. Some of my athletes, they do have some sleeping things going on that they don't sleep enough and they're tired, and that's rightfully so. And then the following week, super alert, super motivated. It's almost like they're going so fast into the program that you have to like really like, okay, let's slow it down a little bit. Let's not get away from really functionally doing that exercise how we expect it to be. But no, like you hit it too, Eric. Like there's gonna be times where things are always evolving, and maybe sometimes the athlete may not be able to do that exercise in a month from now, or 2 months from now, or even 3 months from now. But something clicks, something eventually clicks, and it's either the way that we slow down in how we were coaching, or we really coached it and really demonstrating in a different way, still maintaining the integrity of the exercise. But there's little things that do, like being curious. and being creative sometimes with their athletes that is going to really get that athletes understanding what the expectation is. And to your point too, there's always going to be that latency factor, right? Like some of my athletes, you may say, let's do hurdle steps. And it'll be maybe 5 seconds. So there's some processing there going on as well. And then within the 5 seconds, boom, he's up, he's going and doing a hurdle step. So everybody's going to be different at the end of the day, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. What I really among several things that I really appreciate from you as a coach is your ability to find the importance and significance in the finite stuff, which is really, great coaches have great filters and the ability to look at something or hear something and understand what it is and make the adjustments that you need to for your athlete is really the sign of a coach who understands what needs to be done for that athlete to be successful. And I think that is I think that is the place that every coach should strive to get to, where it is not a pursuit of your own ego, through all the different things that you can do, but what needs to be done in that moment for that athlete so that they can be successful. Jose, as always, every time we have a conversation, I've wanted to record it, and now we finally have. Where can people find you in the greater Ontario area?
So I'm obviously they can find me on my social media, readyfitness.ca. They'll see me there. They can always reach out to me there. And obviously I service the big Ontario area, so like we call it the GTA. So there is a bit of an area that I obviously service, but they can find me on social media. Is the best way to reach me, obviously. And like I said, I'm always open to have conversations with parents, caregivers, teachers, anyone here in Canada that are looking to really motivate their athletes to participate from this program. So
Yeah. And one thing that I don't know if it went unmentioned also, but you also have the dual background both on the exercise side and on the ABA side and behavior therapy side. So being able to speak to the technicalities and the intricacies of both of those areas, I think is extremely important. But what it really culminates in is, the art and science of great coaching and understanding your athlete too, as well. So anybody in the Toronto, Ontario area, seek this man out because he truly is remarkable. And again, I mean this that I am always greatly and deeply appreciative of you being a part of this program and being a such a remarkable um, example of what someone can do through this work and what you can bring to those coaches and families too. So, Jose, thank you very much. I appreciate this interview. I know that people will get a lot out of it also. So many of our certified pros will get a lot out of it. Anything that you have in closing today?
no, honestly, thank you, Eric. I think you also can't sell yourself short what you've done with the program, obviously, and obviously certifying pros. I don't even know what the numbers are now.
We're close to, as of now, so we're in February 2025. We're close to 600.
That's incredible, and that's because of the work that you've done as well, Eric. So like I'm always going to be, like I said, grateful for being able to learn and pick your brain in so many times about different questions and here and there when I'm working with my athletes. So obviously the recognition also goes to you, man. So thanks for that, man.
Thank you, Jose. All right, everybody. Um, again, seek out Jose. Jose, what's your Instagram handle again?
It's readyfitness.ca. So REDI fitness.ca.
Thank you very much. And for those of you who want to become the 700th Autism Fitness Certified Pro, you can go to autismfitness.com, register for the course, and then meet me or one of our master pros for your full day virtual or in-person practical. Thank you, everybody, and would love to know what you thought of this interview. Leave those in the comments below. If you have topics that you'd like us to cover in a future edition of Tuesday Training, leave those in the comments also. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube jargon. Like, subscribe, and definitely share with people who can make a difference if they have the difference of this information. Thanks, everybody.